Well, hey, I'm Jeff, your tabletop tech here in the Dice Tower, and folks, it's time for a shakedown. Alright, so to recap, these shakedown videos are short, streamlined reviews, giving my impressions of a game after a couple of playthroughs to help you decide if it might be something you want to look into. And for this one, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. Well, I guess out of the box, because this is Cat in the Box by Bezier Games. Now, you've probably heard about this one already. This is a trick-taking game, very similar to that of the game of Spades, which was invented in the late 1930s. Now, I have found it pretty interesting. I have introduced this to a number of players across a variety of age groups, and I've met several folks, even my age, who either just didn't play a lot of spades, have never played spades, or have never even heard of the game of spades. And I just found that to be pretty fascinating for a game that is so old and is fairly iconic. So, what I'm going to do is talk about Cat in the Box, but I think it's going to be easier to teach this game after I actually teach the game of spades. And for that, all I need is some playing cards. In Spades, 4 and only 4 players will take turns playing cards from a standard 52-card deck. Spades plays over a series of rounds called tricks, and in each trick, each player will play one card from their hand. The player who is opening the trick can play any card of any suit from their hand except for spades, at least at the beginning of the game. So let's say I played the Queen of Hearts. The player to my left must now play the same suit I played, unless they don't have any. In this case, my opponent plays the Ace of Hearts. The next 2 players also play hearts, but nothing can beat the ace. So the player to my left will win the trick, taking all 4 cards. Whoever won the trick gets to open the next trick, so they decide to play the King of Hearts, which they're fairly confident will win. The next 2 players play hearts, but then the game takes a turn, because you can see here in my hand that I have no hearts remaining. So now I can play any card that I want. Now I can play a club or a diamond, but since the opening suit was hearts, it's essentially just discarding those cards. However, this game is called Spades. So if I play a spade card, it will beat anything else currently on the table. So the winner of the trick is the player who played the highest card of the starting suit or the highest spade. Also, now that I've opened spades, future players can open a trick using the spade suit. At the end of the game, after all cards have been played, players count up the number of tricks they've won. At the beginning of the round, after players have been dealt their cards, they'll estimate or bid on the number of tricks that they think they can win in that round. And at the end of the round, if they have met or exceeded that number, they'll get 10 points for every trick that they bid to win, plus 1 point for every trick in excess of their original bid. Now, if they don't meet their bid, they will get 0 points total for the round. Most games of spades will last until everyone kind of gets bored of playing, or in my experience, when the lunch bell goes off at high school. But the official score to reach is 500 points. Now, let's go check on that cat. Cat in the Box, like Spades, has 4 suits, this time simply blue, yellow, green, and red, which is the equivalent to Spades, the suit that beats all. However, it can play from 2 to 5 players, with the number of cards being used changing based on player count. So 2 players will only use numbers 1 through 5, while 5 players will use 1 through 9. There are no aces or face cards. Unlike Spades, you also have this central board to set up, which simply references the range of cards available in each suit based on player count. And then there are the cards. Brace yourself, because as you can see, all the cards are black and white. No colors, no suits. When you play a card in Cat in the Box, you determine which color it is. You do so by placing the card alongside this little tile which each player has in front of them, indicating the chosen color. That's right, Grandma, unlike in Spades, these cards don't go in the center of the table. You also place one of your player pieces onto the aforementioned central board. This helps everyone remember what cards have already been played and by who during the round. That means that you can decide when you no longer have a card of a particular suit in your hand, and you do that also using your central tile, removing your token from the space indicating the color of the suit you no longer have. From that point on, you can no longer play cards of that suit. So what happens when you have a card left and the only suit in which this card hasn't been played is the suit you said you were out of? Well, then the cat is dead. You've created a paradox and the world explodes. Luckily, only one of those is true. Creating a paradox, however, is bad, and it will immediately end the round, nullifying the current trick, and players will immediately go into scoring, which is a good bit different from the game of spades. First of all, each player will get a point for each trick that they won unless they were the player who created the paradox. There is also an estimating process at the beginning of this game, just like in spades, but you must exactly reach your number of estimated tricks in order to get bonus points. Bonus points are awarded for each of your player pieces in your largest continuous group on this central board. The player who created the paradox will lose a point for each trick that they had won in that round, and they are ineligible for bonus points. Now, in Cat in the Box, you'll play 1 round for every player sitting at the table, so 2 rounds for a 2-player game and 5 rounds for a 5-player game. I played hundreds of rounds of spades back in high school. That's not an exaggeration. I had a group of friends that I played with at lunch every day. Part of me wishes this game had existed back then. The other part of me isn't entirely convinced that this game works. You see, there's a part of this that I have left out until now, and that is that there are 5 of every number of card in this game. That means that right away this game is working against the players, trying to force that paradox. Now, at the beginning of each round, players must discard a card, and the round actually ends with every player still holding a card in their hand. So there are some opportunities to mitigate that disaster, and I often suggest that players try to get rid of their most common card at the start of the round. But that can be iffy advice if a player starts a round with a whole bunch of paired cards. So imagine this scenario. It's down to the last trick. You have a 4, and there's 1 4 that hasn't been played. You haven't declared yourself out of any suits, and you feel safe. You've got this. You're going to make it. And then you watch in abject horror as the player to your right plays their 4, forcing you into the paradox and costing you a ton of points. Did they screw up? Did you screw up? I don't know. That's the part of me that wishes I had a few hundred plays of this game under my belt. I know that there is a ton of tactics and strategy to this game, but I'm not entirely convinced that there isn't an element of pure dumb luck here that can reach up and bite someone a bit unexpectedly in the butt. And it is impossible not to be irate when that happens to you, especially when you have done your best to play it safe during the round. I do really find the game fascinating. And I'm certainly not alone in that. A number of players that I've introduced this to, especially in that group of folks who grew up playing a lot of spades, have often used words like brilliant or incredible right around the midpoint of a playthrough. And the more of it you play, the more of itself Cat in the Box reveals to you. At first, you're just trying to win tricks and get to score your bonus. But as you play, you find yourself trying to play the cards to grow your bonus on the table. Or maybe trying to force someone to win a trick that they don't want so that they don't get the bonus you can clearly see they're about to earn. And it's fun when you see this click for someone, when a player has that aha moment and they're really starting to get the experience of the game, especially if that player is you. But the inverse of that experience exists as well. When 3 or 4 rounds in, someone says, I just don't understand this. I have no idea what's happening. And you can see that they've distanced themselves from the game and they're just happy when it's over. More and more, I'm aware of the fact that I will probably play very few of the games I have in this room more than 3 or 4 times. Cat in the Box, though, is a game I think needs to be played a lot of times with a lot of the same people before this is really going to sing for any of those players. And whether or not that's really achievable for you is perhaps the real mystery surrounding the Cat in the Box. Cheers.